What's up guys, it's Louis here, hope you are doing great. In this video I'm going to cover why I avoid Airbnb properties. At this moment I only run one Airbnb with my parents in a small town in the Free State, so it's not necessarily something that I am currently doing at a large scale, although it is something that I am considering in the future when the right property pops up. But with that said, I'm going to share some pros and cons about investing in Airbnbs, and I'm going to share a couple of tips that can help you to successfully run an Airbnb business. Airbnb has risen exponentially in recent years and shows no signs of slowing down. This home sharing business has changed how millions of people travel worldwide, but running your own Airbnb property might be difficult if you're new to the game. The most important thing to note when running an Airbnb property is to treat it like a business. Running your home or investment property as a short-term rental through Airbnb is a great way to make extra money, but it does come with some downsides that most newcomers often overlook. Some of the pros of investing in an Airbnb property is higher yields. If you rent your home out in a traditional manner, most properties would generate somewhere between 5 to 7% in rental yield. While this is more than acceptable for many, for those prepared to put in some more work, it's possible to double or even triple those figures by renting out your property as short-term accommodation. This potential for higher income is the main reason most people consider renting their homes on a short-term basis. The second pro is access to your property. An often overlooked advantage of Airbnb is that you can still maintain access to your property should you need it for periods of the year. Let's say you want to go on vacation. Short-term rental platforms allows you to choose when your property is available and allow you to use the property as desired without having to remove a tenant on short-term notice. The flexibility is a great way to either make the most of a property that is vacant for a certain period of the year, or even to make some money on a property that you are still living in. Then another pro is maintaining your property. While there are some risks to renting out your property, the flip side is that they also exist with normal long-term tenants as well. You're also able to keep an eye on the property and also manage things like gardens and ongoing maintenance more closely into comparison to a traditional rental agreement. Now we get to some of the cons of investing in an Airbnb property. The first one, of course, is time. While you can make more money renting out your property on a short-term basis, there are some cons to the process, such as time spent organizing the process. To run a successful Airbnb property, you'll have to manage bookings, clean the property and deal with any problems that may arise. It's also worth remembering that on top of cleaning the house or the flat, you will also need someone to wash bedding and towels as well. As a result, this type of income is far from passive. In comparison to having long-term tenants and a property manager, Airbnbs can be a fully active job. While you can hire third parties to manage all elements of your short-term rental, they also charge higher property management fees given the increased workload that they have to do. This is typically around 20% of your rental income, which is far higher than the cost of traditional property management. That's a fifth of your whole income. Then we get to all the costs. The other big difference with longer term rentals is that there can be higher costs involved. As mentioned, you can hire a property manager to take care of many elements of the day-to-day running of the property, but you also have to factor in the platform fees that Airbnb and others charge. You will also have to factor in the cost to properly set up a property, including all the furnitures and items such as appliances, TVs and couches and desks, and even tea or coffee. Another cost that is often overlooked is that when you're running a short-term rental, you are responsible for paying all of the utility bills, which would normally be paid by your longer term tenant. Then we have vacancies, and this is really an important one And the hardest thing to predict with a short-term rental is just how much demand your property will have and how many vacancies you'll encounter. Vacancies will obviously change between seasons, and with summer being far more popular than winter, that also means your income is not consistent over the course of your year. In addition to that, when you start renting out a property, there will be a lot more vacancies than an established short-term rental with a track record of good reviews. So if you want to start from scratch, your vacancies will obviously be more. Another negative is suitability. It's important to understand that not all properties are going to be viable for a short-term accommodation. If you own a property in a beachside holiday location, then the odds are you will be able to rent it out on Airbnb. But if you own a rental property somewhere that doesn't get many tourists or people traveling to and from work, then it might not be a good fit as a short-term rental. Before taking the plunge, do a detailed breakdown of costs involved with a conservative estimate of rental income with a vacancy rate of around 20 to 30%. Also remember your managing costs if it is applicable. That should give you a good idea of whether a short-term rental will be more profitable than a traditional long-term rental. Some tips to consider before starting an Airbnb is to always run the numbers. Before you do anything, you need to sit down and figure out all the numbers. This includes your mortgage, your rent if it is applicable, your monthly bills like your Airbnb fees, taxes, levies, and you can begin by setting your rental price once you have a good understanding of all of your costs or all of your expenses. When pricing your Airbnb, it's important to compare your rates against local hotels and not other rentals on Airbnbs. This is because most people looking for a place to stay will start searching websites that show hotel prices first. If your nightly rate is significantly higher than the cost of hotel rooms, you're likely to lose out on potential guests. However, if your price is lower or on par with hotel rates, you'll likely attract travelers looking for a budget-friendly alternative to traditional lodging. If you want to succeed with Airbnb, you must approach it as a business rather than a normal side hustle. This means being professional, responsive, and organized at all times. You also need to be prepared to deal with guests who have special requests or problems during the day or during their stay. By approaching Airbnb as a complete hospitality business, you'll be more likely to succeed in the long run. One of the most expensive aspects of running an Airbnb property is furnishing your rental. If you're on a tight budget, it's important to shop furniture wisely and to not overspend. A few ways to furnish your rental affordably include shopping at second-hand stores, buying used furniture online, or sourcing items on Marketplace. And by being smart about how you furnish your rental, you can save quite a lot of money in the long term. When creating your Airbnb listing, it's important to be honest about your property. Don't try to trick guests by misrepresenting your rental size, your location, or the amenity. This isn't good for business, but it can also kick you off Airbnb, so play it safe and always be honest. If you want to be successful on Airbnb, it's important to start with a few good reviews. These reviews will help attract new guests and also help increase your search ranking on the Airbnb website. To get started, offer discounts or freebies to your first few guests in exchange for an honest review. Once you have a few good reviews under your belt, you'll be able to do much better. When it comes to Airbnb, cleanliness is next to godliness, and this means that you need to keep your property clean at all times, especially if you have multiple guests staying there. If possible, hire a professional cleaning service to come in after each guest leaves, and this will ensure that your rental is always sparkling clean and ready for the next guest. This is what's very nice when you use a management company, because they do all the work for you. Consider turning on the Instabook feature in your Airbnb listing if you want to simplify things. And this feature allows guests to book your rental without sending a request first. While this might not be ideal for everyone, It can be helpful if you're trying to attract last-minute guests or fill up empty nights. When running an Airbnb property, it's essential to be responsive to guests' needs. This means responding to messages quickly, being available to answer questions, and addressing any problems that might arise. By being responsive, you will not only build goodwill with your guests, but you'll also be more likely to receive a positive review. If you're not responsive, guests will likely look elsewhere for lodging next time, so make sure you're always available to address your guests' needs. Consider creating a concierge document or a booklet to make things easier for yourself and, of course, your guests. This document should include information about your property, nearby attractions, and anything else that might be helpful to the guests during their stay, even stuff like your Wi-Fi password. You can save a lot of effort answering basic questions from guests if you have all of this information in one place. Additionally, your guests will appreciate having all of this information readily available.